welcome one and all. It's time for a spice-tacular Age of Sigmar battle report. Andy's Stormcast Eternals versus Remington's Gloomspite Gitz. And if you can hear some shuffling around in the background there, that is Mr. Remington shuffling in his seat, preparing to unleash his wisdom upon these still images. Hello?
Hello, Andy. Is it time to unleash hell?
Well, there may well be some hell unleashed during the game. That seems very likely, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm just enjoying the extreme close-up there of the models featured in this battle report, and can't wait to share it with you.
Yes, so it's 2,000 points. We played this game at Warhammer World, which would explain why there's no monetization going on this video. Abiding by Games Workshop's terms and conditions for taking photos within the hallowed halls of Warhammer World. So let's drop this epic thumbnail, and you can immediately see the overall view of the game. Now you may think the Stormcast are a bit thin on the ground initially here, but I assure you that is because most of them are in the heavens at the moment when this picture was taken. So if we go through a couple of pictures, we'll come back to these in a second, but we can show you the battle plan that we're using in this game. So it's the Prize of Gallet, which for people who aren't in the know, and I've just realised actually one very important thing. Let's get the thumbnail back up a second, because I need to increase the size of the mouse pointer so people can see it more easily. Let's jump it up all the way to number 8.
So we're gonna hear these words like Gallet and Galician veterans and whatnot. What is this to do with the realm of beasts that this theme of Age of Sigmar this year is based upon, right?
Yes, this about to be outdated General's Handbook.
Uh-huh.
So it continues into the next General's Handbook, though. It's just all about the Galician champions rather than veterans when that book comes out in a week or two. So This is the last hurrah of Season 1 of this year's General's Handbook. So in this particular battle plan, it's the one where you've got the 5 objectives there in this kind of diamond shape with one in the centre, and then whoever goes second in each round picks one of them to activate each turn. So you start off with only one objective to fight over, and then they slowly activate one by one over the course of the game, with the order dictated by whoever's going second. So it's an interesting one, because often going first in a battle round tends to be better when you get into the later turns, but that means you're giving up the choice of which objective to activate. So it adds a little bit of extra spice into the decision making there. And I picked a battle plan that we had both played before, because this came up at the recent event that we were both at. So speaking of that event, your list, how similar is it to the list that you took to that small tournament?
It's very similar. The difference is I went with 2 Mangler Squigs, so 2 monsters. I got rid of the Squig Gobber, which I kind of regret because I love that model. And I've also added some Sneaky Snufflers to the list. And I think that's everything else remains the same.
So if we go through it starting on this right hand side here, because we can see that appears to be the new Mangler Squig there, the new plastic Mangler Squig.
Yeah, it's an awesome model. Very proud of that, and I love painting big models. But yeah, that is my Loon Boss on Mangler Squig, and he has an artifact of power, which is the Loonstone Talisman, granting him a 5-up save against mortal wounds.
Probably going to come in handy because you know I can dish out a lot of mortal wounds with my Stormcast.
Absolutely. And then I've got a command trait called Fight Another Day, and that is after my attacks are made, I can roll 2d6 and get out of combat, so it stops you from hitting me back. So yeah, there's that.
You've also got a Breaker Boss, it's called, isn't it? This Cruel Boys unit here.
Yeah, I do love that model. I do love that unit. So it's the Troggoth Breaker Boss. Basically, it's an Auric on top prodding him, and he goes a bit mental. He is a glass cannon of sorts, I suppose. However, he does come in at 12 wounds and he can regenerate. But I've found he doesn't seem to last long, but he can dish out a lot of damage with high rend.
And you've got, let's see, you've got a squig unit there, you've got a squig unit there. Are they just your standard battle line squigs?
They are. That's my battle line. So my battle line, it's because I've got a squig boss. I can have squigs as battle line, and I've got 2 units of squig herders. They are my Galician veterans.
Yes. So those are the only Galician veterans in your army, because the squig hoppers don't count. So these ones here, these are the Boingrot Bounders, aren't they? The knightly squig hoppers.
Yeah, a lot of fun. So, the big thing about Moonclan Grots and Gloomspite Gitz, and they don't really have any armor save to think of, but this unit comes in at a 4+ armor save, so you can stack some buffs to give them some more. They're very good on the charge, and with the sneaky snufflers there to the left of them, they could be granting them an extra attack, which is very useful.
And you've also got the Marsh Crawler Slogoth right there, also the second Cruel Boys unit that you've got in this army.
Yeah, well, he was very effective in the tournament I played in, especially if he's in the middle of your army, because all the units within 18 inch get +1 to hit because they're beating their drums. So I thought that any bonuses I can get, especially against a Stormcast army, would be most welcome. So he's still in.
Now you've got your little spellcaster here who actually starts off inside your shrine.
Yes. So that's a fungoid cave shaman, and he's got a couple of spells. He's got the Hand of Gork, and he's got the spell that comes with him, called Sporemores, which, if successfully cast, each enemy unit within D6 of the caster suffers D3 mortal wounds. Now, the problem is with a lot of those attacking spells is that they do have this sort of a range. Within 6 inches of the caster, it's like, well, that means he needs to be up close and personal to units, which leads him to be very exposed and vulnerable.
Although, if you've got him inside a piece of terrain like this, it does kind of increase the radius of that. As long as I've got units that are actually near it.
Ah, well, there you go. I didn't think of that, but he's quite good because he gets a 4+ save against normal wounds and mortal wounds every time he's wounded, and that comes in, really handy.
Yeah, that sounds very good. That's basically doubling his amount of wounds.
Yeah.
So you've got another Mangler here, which is the older Forge World model.
Yeah, this is just a basic Mangler Squig, and the thing is, with the Loon Boss on the Mangler Squig, you do get 5 extra attacks for only something like 30 points more. But those 5 extra attacks are pretty rubbish, to be honest, because it's just a goblin at the end of the day. But yeah, 2 Mangler Squigs. Let's see how they get on. What I love about Mangler Squigs, they do diminish as they get wounded, and they start with 12 wounds. But when they go down to 1 or 2 wounds, their stats go back to how they were at the start in terms of how powerful their attacks are, because they kind of get angrier and angrier.
Yeah, you don't want to leave them just alive. You want them kind of half wounded or dead.
Yes, that's true. So yes, behind the Mangler Squig, I've got 6 Troggoths, Fellwater Troggoths. So they've got the puking missile attack, 6-inch range. They've got regeneration, 4 wounds each. Yeah, that's my sort of like big tanky unit. And to the left of them, I've got 10 Squig Hoppers. Now, I've spread my army quite thin and wide, because my tactic in this game is to actually claim the objectives, as much as possible. But it's going to leave me exposed, because I think it is more sensible to keep all your Gloomspite Gitz units together in a sort of a castle formation, protecting your units. But
So you
the
can benefit
downs-
from the Slogoth as well.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got this big castle tanky thing moving forward slowly, hopefully preserving your damage dealing units. But the problem there is that you're not necessarily claiming victory points.
Well, it depends what you're coming up against as well. So when we go through my army in a second, we'll discuss how the two armies match up as well. So I've got... Oh yeah, we should point out that you've got a battalion as well, haven't you? You've got the Squigalanche.
Yeah, the Squigalanche battalion. I can't quite recall what bonus that gives you, to be honest.
It gives them some kind of bonus when they're in the area that's affected by the bad moon, doesn't it?
Is it a 6-inch pile-in?
I believe that's right, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Which is actually really good, potentially.
Yeah. Except when it's negated by something you've got in store for me.
Well, yes, we'll get to that now. So, I've got some of the things I've got on the table. I've got all my heroes starting off on the table, all three of them. So they're in the Warlord battalion. So we've got the Lord Imperatant, and he has the Arcane Tome and the spell Starfall, which is the one that can prevent enemy units from piling in. But you have to cast the spell first of all, and obviously it not be unbound, and then it's on a 3-up that the units nearby will be affected by it. So it's definitely not a guarantee, but it is a very powerful spell potentially. Especially useful for my army, where I've just got small, kind of elite, hard-hitting units that don't want to be piled into by massive squig units. Then we've got the Knight Incanter, who is really just there to auto-dispel one spell per turn, and she's got Lightning Blast because she's a knight, so all her spells are shorter range than all the Lord characters. So Lightning Blast is just a spell that doesn't have a range, so it's the perfect spell for her. It just does D3 mortal wounds to the nearest enemy unit that's visible. Then we've got the Lord Relictor, who, of course, is the general, and he's got Translocation as his spell, as his prayer, should I say. And he's also got the High Priest command trait, so rerollable 2+ to teleport a unit. Can't argue with that.
That's amazing, isn't it? So you can just, every turn, you can put a unit pretty much wherever you need it.
Yes. And there are 2 units of Longstrike Raptors, as you can see. One of them was freshly painted just last week, and that's the one with the white bird. Another one here. They are not part of a battalion. Oh, actually, I think they're in the Warlord battalion with the heroes. The battle line...
They do deal quite a devastating shooting attack, don't they?
Yes, long strikes, definitely devastating. And I'm going to get a bonus shot with one of those units because I've got the Holy Command Thunderbolt Volley. So once per game, one of them can shoot in the hero phase as well.
So what's a Holy Command? Is that something just for Stormcast?
Yeah, they're special commands, but you can't take many of them. You can usually have one, except I've unlocked an extra one by taking the Warlord Battalion. So I've also got Call for Aid, which is the one that can bring back a unit of Liberators in this case.
Amazing. Now, each one of them is carrying a bird. Does the bird have a purpose?
The bird actually does fight in close combat, yes.
Right, okay.
But usually they don't survive close combat. So the bird can fight, because if anything charges them, if they don't kill it with Unleash Hell, they're probably going to die anyway and not get to fight.
I got you.
So we've got Expert Conquerors in this army, which means that 3 of my Galatian Veteran units are going to be worth triple on objectives. So there's a unit of Liberators here. There is also one in the sky, and there is also a unit of 5 Judicators, who are also part of that. They're all my battle line units. And then in the Bounty Hunters Battalion, who are going to do bonus damage to Galatian Veterans, we've got 2 units of Grandhammer Annihilators, and the Stormstrike Chariot with the spear rather than the bow. So, there's more shooting than I normally have, because I've added the second unit of Long Strikes, and I think this looks really dangerous for Rem on paper, this matchup. So...
Yeah, now Galatian Champions, did you have any of those?
Well, they're not a factor yet, because the General's Handbook isn't out yet.
Ah, I see, okay. That's
however,
good, because I didn't have any.
Yeah, that is something that's going to benefit Stormcast, though, for me at least, because I've got plenty of heroes that I don't use very much, so they're going to come back into fashion a bit. But when I was looking at the lists, I thought, I think your big stuff is not going to last long.
Yes.
Because I've got a lot of shooting. I've got more shooting to come down from the sky. I've got a lot of mortal wound output from dropping annihilators down. Mortal wounds on the charge from annihilators and the chariot, and then just massive damage in combat that I can precision strike into your lines.
Ouch.
So,
Andy, this is why I spread my forces out, really, was to prevent you coming down and alpha striking me in the first turn. So I was trying to prevent you from beaming down behind me or to the side of me.
well, because I was finishing deploying first, then I'm going to have the choice of who goes first or second. So, because you've got this particular spread going on here, my thinking is I'm going to make you go first, because then as soon as you move, suddenly there's spaces behind and in front.
Yes.
So what I would think, the only way to keep things safe, probably, you've got these squig units that, okay, they're decent at fighting, but they're probably not very expensive. Mm-hmm. Potentially, to avoid the annihilators getting into your big juicy stuff early on, is just kind of lining squig units around a blob of all the other stuff. Mm-hmm. So that even if I land behind you, I'm still hitting squigs.
I think the other thing I was thinking was, I knew that you've got good shooting and good range. Those big crossbows you've got, like 30-inch range. So I was aware that you could focus fire and do a lot of damage too. If I've got 3 monsters, let's say, you could kill one a turn potentially. So I was trying to keep them either in cover or out of range as best as possible.
Yes, that's another factor. So building that castle is all well and good if the only thing you're worrying about is annihilators running into you. But there are also all these long strikes. But if you were to build a bit of a castle and surround just regular squigs around everything else, I would be forced to probably shoot either without the annihilator support going in later, which gives you a chance to heal the characters after I've shot them, or I would have to shoot down the squig units before I can get to the meaty centre.
Yes.
And of course, shooting is after the movement phase, so if I were to land annihilators down 7 inches away from your squig line, and then shoot the squigs down, suddenly it's a longer charge for the annihilators now.
Now, one thing you can rely on with the squigs is that they're prone to running away because they've got bravery 4.
The only way you prevent that easily is by keeping them near the shrine, isn't it?
Correct, yes.
So this game, because it's all kind of contested in this small area, there's not really a great need to be spread out too much. However, had you gone for just a castle in the middle there, my thinking would have been, well, I can bring down units like down here. I could bring down some judicators over here. So if you want to go after them, you're gonna have to send a unit out there, which opens up a gap in your wall. And I can always teleport long strikes right into the corner, so you're nowhere near them, but they can still shoot you. And that if you go to attack them, then you're not contesting any of the objectives yet.
Yeah, and that's the wider thing, really, isn't it? Is that I could castle up and try and counter-attack you as you're surrounding me, and maybe even take out a few things that you've brought down, but I would get damage. And meanwhile, your guys are happily at your end of the table, not really being challenged, while you're getting victory points here and there.
Another thing that I had to be aware of, the reason why these liberators are here actually, is because a lot of your units have random movement. So because I'm going to be letting you go first, I want to be in range to shoot you if you decide to just not move forward much at all. And the reason I want these liberators here is because any unit with 3d6 movement on a lucky turn could suddenly bounce 18 inches forwards and be within charge range of me.
Especially if the Gloomspite Gitz are being affected by the light of the bad moon, in which they can run and charge in the same turn.
Yes, so my thinking is if you get a lucky movement and move 18 inches forward or thereabouts and end up close to my lines, if you're within 9 inches of the liberators, they could redeploy closer to you.
Yeah.
So that then when you want to charge, you're not going to be able to get round them to get to the long strikes. You'd have to go through the liberators first. So that's just a worst case scenario bit of planning there. Then, moving on. So let's go to actually the start of the game now.
You gave me first turn, basically, didn't you?
Yes. Because I do not want to get double turned by squigs that have random movement, because potentially with 2 turns in a row you could get anywhere and just eat all my units. So I do not want to get doubled. So giving you first means that you're definitely not going to get a double early. You may get one later, but not early on. So you've gone for the standard opening battle tactic of against the odds, which is just very easy to achieve. If you can hold on to it till later, then it is often useful because it's an easy one to score all throughout the game. But at the start of the game, you don't usually have that many options. So this is the objective that you activated as well.
Yep.
This one here, on the left. Not the centre, but the left. So what was your thinking with picking a flank objective first?
I wanted to get my squig hoppers up and just getting that as soon as possible, I suppose. I don't know, was that a mistake? Should I have picked the one? I don't think I could pick the one in my territory, so it was... and I didn't want to feed you my loon boss on Mangler Squig by moving things up on the other side. So I thought I would test the water somewhat with my, normal Mangler Squig and some Squig hoppers. I didn't mind too much losing them, and I thought that I could give you a good challenge to anything that might want to countercharge me or try and get near me.
Well, I would see some sense in your plan of not activating the other flank because you've got big monsters that are in cover on that side. So you probably don't want to be running them straight out of cover at the start of the game.
No, but the other thing is, it's like when you've got these big squiggly monsters and you know they're very good in combat, psychologically you want them to run and charge into the enemy. When maybe it might be better to hold them back, especially in the first turn. But
although, in reality, you kind of have to dangle something out in front of me, because otherwise you're just going to get shot all game. If there's no real incentive for me to charge, then you're just going to get shot. So you've got to move forward. And so there's your setup on that side. You got both your monsters fully in cover in there.
I do have Hand of Gork, and that was one thing I thought could be really useful, but I failed it, or you dispelled it, either one or the other.
Yeah, that basically teleports one of your units, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think I didn't cast it for whatever reason, couldn't, and so that was a bit annoying.
We're also
to give you another something to think about on the other side if I could.
We're using this dice to show the bad moon as well, which is currently starting in that corner, so it's not illuminating anywhere yet.
Yeah.
So what you want is for it to stay in the centre for much of the game. So it's likely to end up here at some point, which should illuminate this area and then move to the middle.
Yeah, and that's why I put a lot of my squig units over that side, so they could get affected as soon as possible, so I could do a run and charge. So I didn't mind holding them back a little bit.
So you got pretty much maximum points for that turn. The only way you can get more is if you choose a battle tactic that gives you bonus points for using Galician veterans, which is difficult in the first turn. So 4 points, the standard opening. So for my first round, I've gone for gaining momentum. So I have to pick an enemy unit and kill it and hold more objectives than you at the end of the turn. So you can see the result of this. I chose the Mangler Squig because I knew I could definitely kill that. I've got all these long strikes. I was planning to drop down the Judicators as well, all that shooting into the Mangler, and then the Chariot was going to be ready to charge it as well.
Yeah, now you also have to remember, Andy, I've not played against some of the units you're fielding, so I wasn't sure about how much damage they could actually dish out.
Yes. So the Mangler Squig, as you can see, got shot to death. And
yeah, was it pure shooting, or I think you charged him as well?
The Chariot charged in there as well.
And that was devastating, right?
I believe, actually, the shooting was all that was needed to kill the Mangler. I think the shooting killed it, and then the Chariot ended up going into the Squigs, which is why they're dead as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember if I put an all-out defense on the Mangler. Either way, I think it's just some of your long strikes, they're just doing 2 damage, aren't they?
It's the sixes to hit 2 mortal wounds that was getting through, because I
Wow.
think you did put all-out defense on, because that would have prevented my battle tactic, obviously, if I didn't kill that unit.
Yeah, you were rolling pretty well with those. Maybe you did get a few sixes, didn't you?
I also needed to kill some squigs so that I could control this objective as well.
Yeah, which you did do. Did you kill them all?
I did.
Like you
So
did. Wow.
I moved the chariot up here first, because if I bring the annihilators down over here and then move the chariot, you could potentially redeploy the squigs and get more of them near the objective.
Yeah.
So I moved the chariot first, because then if you'd moved the squigs onto the objective, I might think, okay, that's more important now, and bring down annihilators here to attack the squigs. But
Yeah.
as it were, the annihilators were able to come down right here, and there wasn't much of a screen for some of your powerful units. So I think they had to land about there, between all the
Yes.
units. So they ended up getting a nice charge, which
Yes.
was able to take out the marsh crawler Slogoth, who was on the front line.
Which I was quite surprised you went for him, but I don't think I even got to attack back with the slug off. I think even though it's got 12 wounds, those guys with the hammers are absolutely devastating. Are they dealing 3 wounds?
3 damage each, yes.
Wow. And they've got how many attacks each?
Only 3. 4 for the champion.
And I think was it like 2s and 2s?
Well, usually all-out attack is going to be used on them, which makes it 2s and 2s, yes.
Jesus, that's unbelievable. Plus, of course, on the charge, you can dish out mortal wounds.
Yes, on average, on the charge, they're going to be doing a few mortal wounds as well. So that was killed. They also killed a few of these squigs, who then struck back and killed one of them in retaliation.
But then you blew up and killed and did more damage. I think in this game, when Stormcast units die, there's a chance of me getting mortal wounds. This game showed that that's quite powerful.
It can be.
Get a death by 1,000 cuts for me.
I have been through games where just all my units have exploded and done nothing.
Yeah.
So occasionally it'll do well. I think actually on this side, some of the squig hoppers died from battle shock as well.
No, they wouldn't have, because they're within the light of the bad moon there. They're
within the shrine.
Yeah.
Okay, not yet for the battle shock losses then. That'll come later. So, I achieved the battle tactic, and I'm holding more objectives, so I'm going to get 4 points as well. One unit of annihilators has dropped down. The adjudicators have dropped down. You can see also.
Yeah. Sorry, Andy.
You can see.
This is the first turn.
Yes.
And if you win priority, it's going to look quite devastating for me, because I think I calculated it. You'd already killed almost 1,000 points.
Well, we'll see what happens next. But you might notice that the long strikes have moved a bit. That's because the Lord Relixer translocated the unit from here over here, because I want to focus my shooting on this side, and I want to be as far away as possible from the general on the Mangler and the Maya Brute Troggoth there. So that's the plan. I'm just leaving Liberators for them to feast on and shuffling the long strikes this way.
Now, psychologically, I was very wounded, because a Mangler squig, 240 points worth, I think, just been killed by the shooting. So if I was to do Hand of Gork and get them near charging range of your shooting, then you could unleash hell and possibly kill me or get me really weak. So that was a big psychological barrier. Plus the fact I didn't seem to be able to get that spell off successfully, because that could have been one thing to do, was to try and clear out your back ranks somehow.
That is true. There's the dead pile from turn 1. So quite a lot of stuff.
Also, your long strides, didn't they shoot twice?
One of the units was able to shoot twice because of the holy command which I used.
That made a big difference, I think.
It sure did. And then into the next turn, well, we see actually that the bad moon moves a bit, so it's now infecting this quarter, shining its light into this area that has lots of your troops in it.
Yeah.
And I won the priority, So I get to go second, or I get to go first in the second round, should I say. So it's the double for the Stormcast immediately, and I was thinking if everything goes well in this turn, it's basically game over already.
Yeah.
And you've activated this objective here, and you also made it a proving ground.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? I've got Galician veteran squigs there. I've got my loon boss on Mangler squig nearby, and I've got the breaker boss, and I've got the Borngrot bounders all within range of that. So it's a no-brainer.
So there's how the battlefield looks at the start of this round. So for the battle tactic, I go for against the odds, pick one unit from my starting army, and it just has to hold an objective, and I pick the Lord Imperatant, who just moves up onto that objective, because it's just an easy one, and it gets him closer, because the chariot can't issue commands to itself. So it needs a hero. So you'll see that those dice there, that's the chariot's charge roll, and the chariot and the annihilators both have the wonderful rule of whatever you roll on the dice for a charge, on a 4+, mortal wounds are being dished out.
And you rolled that successfully every time, I believe.
And if you see these annihilators here, rolled an 11.
Yeah, which basically deleted the trolls.
Yes.
Just like two guys with hammers killed all those trolls. I think I did do a all-out. I did stand and shoot.
Unleash hell with your vomit.
Yes, and I did manage to maybe get one or two mortals wounds through.
I think you did, yes. But with all that combined, let's just have a look at how it was before. So,
yeah, and the shooting as well.
I believe I shot down these squigs, which is what allowed the annihilators to then charge.
Mm-hmm.
So the long strikes and the judicators focused on mainly bringing down the squig unit there, so I could then charge the annihilators into the trolls, and all the trolls are dead. So the one thing that stops it being game over, in my view, is... Hold on. The annihilators up here. Came down. I thought, you know what, if I can kill that Mangler squig now, I'm happy to say basically game over at that point, I think. However, they came down and failed their charge.
Yeah.
So I think that keeps the game very much alive, because even though I've caused absolute devastation and killed about half your army in the first 2 turns, maybe slightly more than half your army.
Bear in mind, I haven't actually done anything with the army yet. I've just moved them forward.
Yes, my army is fragile. Once you get into them and things start dying, things like annihilators don't stick around. They only 9 wounds in the unit for 240 points. So
they got 4 up save or 3 up?
3 up, but still. And then there's the chariot, which is already wounded. And then because I've taken these 3 shooting units that are all fairly expensive, that's about a third of my army there. And if anything gets into them, they just disappear immediately.
And the good news for me is that I've got a breaker boss and I've got the Mangler squig there. But do I go forwards or back? Do I try and take out that back unit of annihilators that appeared in my rear? Obviously, I've got to get rid of the one annihilator that's left that looks like he's been wounded. All I've got there is my wizard snuffer squigs, and I've got the Borngrot bounders behind the scenery there in the middle. I decided to ignore the annihilators at the back and get the victory points by getting forwards, deleting the liberators, deleting the annihilator, and using the bounders to do that in the middle, and trying to get rid of the chariot with the bounders as well.
And another thing that's notable here is that these liberators have come down from the heavens, and they are taking this objective because they're Galatian veterans, that each one is worth 3 on the objective there, so they've taken that now. Now, it is also a risk taking a proving ground with Galatian veterans, because it opens up one of the battle tactics that allows you to get the successful battle tactic by killing or removing a Galatian veteran unit from the proving ground.
Yeah.
So it's a risky maneuver.
That's what I chose to do.
So trolls are dead. Most of the squigs are dead. There's a couple of stragglers left in that unit here.
Yeah. I think I tried to to rally them, but they were in combat, so I couldn't.
Yes, and then they got shot to bits.
Yeah, so I was almost hoping that you deleted them, because when I get a squig unit completely deleted on a 4-up at the end of my turns, I might be able to bring them back coming out of the Loon Shrine at half strength. So that's good if you can roll it.
Yes. Now, I'm looking at this picture and thinking, when I shot them, surely there must have still been some of them alive. So it looks like you peeled off the closest ones.
Yes.
Which then took the Annihilators out of combat, which meant they were able to make a fresh charge into the Trolls.
Yeah, that was just inexperience on my part. I didn't think of that. I just literally just randomly took some squigs out. So that's something I've got to remember. Like the models that get removed do matter. Doesn't matter where you remove them from.
Yes.
So what are you saying? You're saying I could have kept the Trolls alive? I'm
saying you could have stopped the Annihilators charging into the Trolls. The chariot still would have done some damage.
Yeah, but you see, I would have done the vomiting on the chariot. Who knows?
I also think that because you'd peeled off enough to get them out of combat, I then stopped shooting the squigs and moved on to the Trolls. So it does potentially make a difference, because I think if I'd carried on shooting the squigs, I would have finished them all off. But then I would have had less shooting to contribute to the Trolls' demise.
What I found was with your shooting, it was more effective against monsters than it was against units.
That is true, actually, because their mortal wounds are obviously very high quality wounds. -2 rend on a lot of that shooting as well, very high quality. So when you're shooting at big monsters, each one of those wounds is worth a lot. When you're shooting into some really cheap 2.2 wound squigs,
2 wounds, exactly. That's
very,
the thing.
yeah, they're very.
10 of them, it means 20 wounds, whereas the monsters I have only 12 wounds.
Yeah, so doing mortal wounds, it's a lot quicker for me to kill a monster than it is to kill a much cheaper unit of squigs.
Yeah.
So there's the dead pile already. So I got my battle tactic, got maximum points for that round.
It's a shame. I really want my Trolls to actually get into combat in my favour, as in me charging. And I never seem to do that. I think they're probably just. I might go with 2 units of 3 next time, just to keep a unit alive. So
by the way,
get in combat.
Whoever's watching this live, and I can see you there, don't forget to comment along and like the video, obviously. You can see here the Annihilators in position failed their charge. So this actually, they rolled 6 twice with their reroll as well. So very disappointing there. Now, you've got a dilemma with these Annihilators, and we actually had quite a lengthy discussion over the table about this. So, should Remington kill these Annihilators while they're sitting out in the open? Ignore the objectives, not go near my shooting, and instead go backwards and fight these 3 Annihilators that you could run away from, and they're very slow, so they may not catch you for the entire game. It's a tough choice.
Yeah. It was tough. Maybe the breaker boss in the forest, just to the right of the centre, could have waded in there and potentially killed 2.
Well, I think either of these monsters going in there would have a decent chance at killing them.
If they rolled well.
Yeah, they're both considered monsters, aren't they?
Yeah, and I've never used that tactic because you've got a thing that monsters can't do.
Yes, I don't think I mentioned it at the start, but my army is Astral Templars, which I've been taking a lot of lately, which prevents monstrous rampages from targeting my units. So that makes them more survivable against monsters, because often what they'll do, the Annihilators, they want to drop down and then charge into a monster and kill it. But if they charge in and then it just steps on one of them, or stops them having all-out attack used on them, then they're much less effective. So I found that a really good sub-faction.
I mean, if I did the monstrous roar, you don't get command points, command abilities for that unit. If I did the stomp, I could get D3 mortal wounds, potentially kill one of those 3 before the combat even.
Yes. So that's what I've done away with my sub-faction. So it does make them a bit more survivable against monsters. So it's not a guarantee that one of these turning round would just wipe them in one go. We've got David in the chat. Hello there. So, moving on to the Remington turn 2. And you go eye for an eye, which is very easy because there's just one Annihilator on his own in the middle of the battlefield. And I think he's wounded as well. So all you have to do is kill him. And I think you kill him with magic spell, don't you?
Kill who? The Annihilator?
The remaining Annihilator. Yes.
Yeah, I do.
Yes, you kill him with the magic spell and get your battle tactic immediately. So it was very easy. Perfect time to use that battle tactic, because it's not very often you just have one model left with maybe 1 or 2 wounds that you can just instantly kill at the start of the turn. So
yeah. Now, what I love about them 3 squigs there is Andy's going to come into a dilemma. Does he shoot them off the table, giving me the opportunity to bring them back, or does he keep them there, which means I'll be on a objective still?
Well, if we look at the squig unit, you may think, well, that's feeble. You put a few shots in there, kill them, but it's 6 wounds there. Well, actually 5 because that one's already wounded. But, So how many shots do you divert into this squig unit to try and kill them all?
Yeah.
Because even if you kill them all on a 4+, a unit at half strength just comes back from the shrine. And if you don't shoot them all, then they could potentially rally. Because there's so many of them dead, they may get a couple back.
Yeah.
So it is a dilemma seeing a unit at that strength. It's really tempting to just leave them alone because you don't want them coming back later, but then you're going to kill them sometime, surely. And later in the game, if they come back then, they can optimally position themselves when they drop out of the shrine to maybe take an objective later on in the game when all the objectives are active. So if you get them to kind of rebirth early in the game, before the objectives have come online, then they're less useful.
Good news is you've still got your chariot. The bad news is you've got Boingrot Bounders just to the right of that picture, ready to get in.
Yeah, so the Boingrots making their way towards the chariot and the Lord Imperatant. That's one of the active objectives there.
Yeah.
And at the back there, the Snufflism. So you decide in the end to not go after the Annihilators.
Yes, run away from the Annihilators for better or worse. Bring the sneaky Snufflers up as much as I can. And I'm going to give the Snufflers... I think you put
+1 attack on the Boingrots, don't you?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And over here, the Mangler makes a really big random move, gets over this terrain, and then the Troll and the Squigs are going to go and munch those Liberators.
Yeah, that's right. And the light of the bad noon is in my favour, don't forget. So those units can run and charge. So that's amazing for the Mangler Squig, because I think I rolled 16 movement plus a run, bringing me right into almost in Andy's face and give me some options to charge.
Yes, and this is the more powerful Mangler as well, the General. So there's the abandoned Annihilators. So you can see the validity of this strategy, because they only move 4, the Annihilators. So if I use a command point on them next turn to auto-run them 6, I can move them 10 inches, but then they're not charging, so you've got another turn to run away from them, potentially. So running away from them, especially if you've got any shooting, which you don't have much of, you've only really got a bit of magic and a bit of vomit, which is all dead. If you had, for example, some Cruel Boys, Bolt Boys allied in, these Annihilators would be dead. That's what I think. If you didn't get them killed, anyway. If they were still alive at this point.
Yeah, I think I might bring in the Bolt Boys at some point, yeah.
They are the bane of my existence, because my army relies on its armour saves to stay alive, and Bolt Boys just dishing out mortal wounds left and right.
Yeah, amazing.
So
amazing. When you said you'd bring your Stormcast army, I didn't think you'd bring a big infantry and shooty list. To be honest, I thought you'd bring in some. I don't know.
Well, this is actually the list that I'm going to be taking to the Nottingham GT at the weekend. So I'm sure it could be stronger, because they're just things I don't own. But from my model collection, I think this is a pretty strong list that I feel well equipped to deal with many different armies. Not all of them, but some. Yeah. So +1 attack on the Boingrots. We'll see if they make it in. The Mangler, with its charge, actually gets all the way around here, which is really scary. If it managed a little bit further, you could have even got into the long strikes. So, if you'd gone maybe an extra 2 inches with your overall move and charge rolls, you could have piled into the long strikes. Or, if the bad moon was in the middle of the table at this point, you could pile in 6 inches.
Ah, yes, that's true. I think I was still wary of your Unleash Hell.
Yes. So the issue with that is, of course, that you have to pile in and not be... You have to pile in towards the nearest enemy model. So you can potentially swing round models, but the way this unit's set up, it would be difficult to pull it off there. But if you had a higher charge roll, you could have maybe even got to the long strikes if you'd rolled a little bit higher on everything. But as it stands, if you get the next turn, you're going to eat the Liberators now. If you get the next turn, it's going to be long strike soup.
Oh yeah, and I would love to kill the Lord Relictor.
Yes,
because that would stop you from teleporting, wouldn't it?
Yes, so those two, very important. I don't think we mentioned earlier that we both have take what's theirs grand strategy as well. So the Relictor dying would completely hamper that plan, because he's very important for teleporting units and himself around late in the game to get into enemy territory.
Exactly. And you'd hidden him at the back there precisely to avoid this sort of conundrum.
Yes, so you've made your charges.
So all this did depend on me getting the double turn. So this is my turn too.
Yes.
Yeah, and when it comes to rolling priorities in this game, Andy kept rolling 6s and I kept rolling 1s. It was quite unbelievable.
Well, you've made your charges here with all these units that attempted. So the chariot's in peril.
Amazing.
You decided with the Boingrots not to get close to the Lord Imperator. You wanted to focus everything on the chariot.
Yeah, my experience with Boingrots, well, with all Gloomspite kits, you can't guarantee that you're going to delete a unit, so it's best to just focus in.
Well,
I could have split the attacks, but then I realised that your Lord Imperator had 8 wounds and a 3-up save, something like that.
I think is it 7 wounds he's got? Let's see. It's a lot anyway. Yeah, 7 wounds.
It was a lot. There's no way I could have killed both those units unless I got the double turn.
I don't know. On the charge with +1 attack, I think you were rolling. Was it 30 attacks just for the squigs? And that's without the riders.
Well, no, they'd both got 2 attacks each, but with the bonus, they'd have 3 attacks each with a +1 to wound on the charge.
Yeah, I think you could have killed both of these.
Wow.
Because you've got rend on that as well, haven't you?
I've got -1 rend, yeah.
I think you could have... Even if you didn't kill them, the chariot's not very good when it's not charging. So you would have seriously crippled these 2 units, and they probably wouldn't have survived much longer. And I don't think you had to worry about the Imperatant's attacks, because at most he's going to peel off a couple of them.
Yeah,
so,
again, I wasn't sure about what damage he was able to do, so...
On the other hand, though, all the Annihilators have already come down, so the Imperatant's value has dropped significantly now.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking, Andy, I kill your chariot, then I get the priority, and then I can kill that Imperatant. Or even make it to your shooty guys. I don't know, I just wasn't that confident in the bounders.
Well, I think you're more confident at killing the Liberators over here, so we'll see how that pans out. So, the Mangler, your general, which is very nicely painted, by the way, eats the Liberators. However, I then use the Holy Command to bring back a fresh unit of Liberators right here. So my plan is to, if I get the next turn, shoot the Mangler to bits. If I don't get the next turn, then the Liberators might provide a small roadblock if they're lucky. But I think chances are if you go next, the Mangler doesn't even need to move because it would stop me redeploying, although you could potentially move like here. And where am I going to go really? I can only move 1 unit. You could charge in. You could probably kill both units of long strikes in one go if you can get into a position to hit them both. So that's kind of what I'm trying to avoid, because you can see the Liberators there and the Knight Incanter between them. So it might be tricky for the Mangler to land in a position to hit both units. So I'm trying my best to avoid that, but it might not be possible.
Yeah.
So the Chariot versus the Boingrots. So I use all out defense on the chariot because I think maybe I could keep it alive with some good save rolls on it. But no,
Yeah.
it's dead.
I can't remember. Did I overkill it?
Yes. So I was rolling the saves. It was still alive after the riders had fought. And then the squigs needed to do another few wounds. So I rolled a few dice and I failed enough. So I still had a handful of save rolls to do. So I think
I can see that you killed 1.5 of my point.
Yeah, the chariot, when it's not charging, it doesn't do a lot. So I think you definitely could have killed both of these guys.
Oh, man.
Then over here... Now, this is disappointing, isn't it?
I mean, the other thing about that is I wouldn't know how to distribute the attacks. Do you know if I was putting them both in? This is really disappointing. The breaker boss just rolled really badly.
Yeah, I think he only hit with like one of his attacks, didn't he? With his club.
Yeah, he's basically got, with his big club attack, he's got four attacks. And it's 3 to hit, 3 to wound, -2 rend, damage 3, which is phenomenal.
If you hit.
Yeah, if I hit. So I rolled 2 hits and then only 1 wounded. So
I would say,
yeah.
when we look at this combat over here, I don't know if all-out attack was necessary to kill that chariot. So maybe all-out attack here could have guaranteed killing the Liberators.
Absolutely, yeah. But then the squigs were there too to try and finish the job. And I don't know. They obviously didn't do well. Maybe you did some good saving throws.
I think I did roll the saves quite well for the Liberators as well. Yes.
Yeah, because they are, they've got 3-up save, haven't they?
Yeah. So they're no pushovers, but
No,
it's not a lot of wounds. It's only a 10 wound unit.
Yeah. The other thing you can rely on with Stormcast is that they never ever seem to run away.
Very rarely.
Yeah. So I don't know. Did you use a command point to keep them there, or did they just not need to take?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
But over here, you can see that your shrine has actually popped out a fresh unit of squig hoppers.
I love it. So yeah, that's a good bit of fun there. That's going to give you something else to think about.
It certainly is.
Some of your shooting.
So let's have a look at this battlefield overview and think about what it means for who's going next.
Oh, it's huge.
So if you go next, long strikes, we can pretty much rule out a unit of long strikes existing. That's the minimum that you would kill with the Mangler, I think. Because even with Unleash Hell, that's not going to kill him. So he's going to take one of them down at least. Maybe the Relictor as well. Up here, the Breaker Boss has got free reign. Because I think... Have you got some kind of ranged attack with the Breaker Boss?
No.
Okay.
No.
So
And
the Breaker Boss...
5-inch as well. He's only got 5-inch movement.
Yeah, the boss might actually be stuck there then if you haven't got a way of killing the Liberators with magic or anything. So the Liberators are going to die anyway. Up here, the Boingrots, they can ignore the Imperatant and just bounce right into long strikes or Judicators or whatever they can reach. You've got this small unit of 5 Squig Hoppers, which, if you can get them close enough, you could actually use them to absorb Unleash Hell as well. You've got...
Oh, that's an interesting tactic. Yeah, but that's a big movement. I'd have to roll high.
It is. You've got these 3 squigs here, which you can just sit around near objectives. Because if you're going next, I'd probably... Which objective would I activate? Because these two, the 2 flank objectives, are active. I'd be tempted to activate this one because it's near my troops, but you're right there and you're going to kill all my troops that are actually there. So I might actually activate one that's definitely yours, like this one, because I kind of want to be on that side of the table later anyway.
Yeah. I mean, this is... so, just before my go, it really looked like I was down and out. But by the end of this turn 2, it looks like the Gitz have the advantage. The Annihilators at the back are almost out of the game, in theory. And it looks like if I can win priority, the Loon Shrine moves into the centre and gives me all
the bad move,
running and charging, plus -1 to your magic. It's looking really positive at this moment now.
Yeah, because in terms of number of models killed, you've not killed a huge amount, because obviously some of these Liberators came back, but you're right into the meat now, potentially. So you got your battle tactic, 5 points.
Yeah, I mean,
And
you bringing back the Liberators is huge. I mean, I think you should definitely keep that tactic in your army because it just buys you another go. If they're going to be a speed bump, buys you a,
especially when you combine it with a Lord Relictor, because if you use the point and just bring them down next to him, then you can teleport them anywhere next turn. So, look at this. Of course, I win the priority again.
Yeah, I think you rolled a 6. I rolled a 1.
Yes.
But we did roll for the light of the bad moon, and it moved into the center of the table, meaning the whole table is now affected by the bad moon. So that's on the positive for the Gitz.
Yes.
But now we don't win the priority, so Andy gets to dictate the battle now.
So I'm going to try and desecrate their lands, and you can see immediately that the Lord Relictor teleports a unit of long strikes into the opposite corner of the table. So there are 3 reasons for this. 1, I can't guarantee that I'm going to kill the Mangler Squig, which is only like over here. 2, I need a unit to be in enemy territory for my grand strategy, and also to use the barge through enemy lines battle tactic later. So to keep them safe, keep them ready for my grand strategy, and 3, I can then shoot at the enemy and maybe lure them away from the objectives if they want to chase them down, because you can't avoid the long strikes. They're just going to shoot you all day.
Yeah.
And there's a big pile of squigs here. What's going on there? What's that picture in relation to?
Something's been killed there on the left.
What is it that's been... Oh, it's the Breaker Boss. Yeah, so the Breaker Boss on Troggoth was shot down by the long strikes that teleported up into the corner.
Yeah, that was horrible. That was horrible, especially because he can regenerate wounds, but I didn't even get a chance to. Yeah, that's phenomenal. I mean, he's got 12 wounds, but did you focus fire everything onto him?
No. So this is a bit of a gamble, because obviously the Mangler was down here somewhere, and I had 2 long strike units there. I thought, you know what, in this turn I have to kill 2 monsters, because you could go next, you could double me, you could kill all my shooting across those 2 turns, so I have to kill both monsters in this turn.
Well, so, I think your Liberators exploded as well, and got a couple of wounds that way.
I think the Breaker Boss actually died from the Liberator exploding on it. I think I did 11 wounds with the long strikes, or got him up to 11 wounds. I think he was already a little bit wounded, maybe. And then the Liberator did the final wound by exploding on him, so that's how he died. And we'll get to an equally funny incident in a moment. The Annihilators have just moved as fast as they can get near the enemy, so they're still not fighting, but they're in striking distance. The Lord Imperatant decides not to go after the Boing Grots. Now, could this have been a mistake? Because, okay, what I wanted to do was cast Starfall. Because I want to tie up this unit so they can't charge any of my shooting units. The way to do that is to charge them with the Imperatant and not die. Because then, next turn, you'll be stuck fighting me. However, because I failed to cast Starfall, that means you're going to be able to pile in. So I think with piling in, you might actually kill him in 1 round. So that's why he doesn't charge them. Because I think it would just be throwing his life away for nothing. Over here, you can see that I also got the Mangler Squig up to 11 wounds. Which all-out defense has been slapped on it. I got Liberators into position. I'd shot my Judicators and Long Strikes down here at the Mangler. I also did the Lightning Blast spell from the Knight Incanter. So up to 11 wounds. The Liberators charge in.
Bear in mind, I've got a 5-up save against mortal wounds, but it didn't seem to be successful. So the Mangler's somehow only lost 2 wounds. Now he's lost another 9 wounds. He's got.
However,
that's with all-out defense on him too.
When you then strike and kill some Liberators, look, a 6, mortal wound. Mangler fails his ward save. Mangler is also killed by an exploding Liberator. There you go.
Yeah.
So I've met my objective of killing both the monsters. My battle tactic, by the way, was to desecrate this bit of land here. So it's still in the balance, but there aren't a lot of Gitz. They don't have a lot of hitting power now. There's still enough to deal with my units in combat if you can get there, because obviously these units in particular are very weak in combat. There's a unit of 2 Liberators there. The Knight Incanto's not much in combat.
My only hope now is the only decent unit is the Boingrot Bounders. The fact that the Bad Moon is in the middle, granting me run and charge, which I'm not sure if that,
There is one other thing to point out, actually. In this turn, I make the conscious choice to concede the entire middle of the battlefield.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be fighting your squig units yet. I was focusing in on the 2 monsters for this turn. That was my goal. Kill the monster here, kill the monster there. Which means I'm not picking up any points for objectives.
Well,
so,
what would you put there?
Well, I could have charged in and gone after or shot at some of your objective holding units and tried to move units onto the objectives, potentially teleported units onto objectives. But I decided I'm not even going to attempt that because I don't want to go near your squigs. I'm going to just keep off all the objectives for now and just kill the big monsters and then try and rack up points later on in the game. So not even attempting to play the scenario here, just trying to kill the monsters for that turn.
I mean, it made me think, my Mangler squig at the bottom, maybe I should have done the fight another day and tried to get out of range of your Liberators charging. But there you go. I didn't.
That is true, but you also would have been further away.
Exactly.
So it would have been more difficult for you to charge if you'd got the next turn.
Yeah.
And generally, you're not worried about being charged by Liberators. You're more concerned about being shot, aren't you?
Yeah, and now my only way of even contemplating winning this game is to get those battle tactics and victory points with what I have remaining, even though I've got weak units.
Okay, so only 2 points for me for that round, though, because, as I was saying, I just gave up on the objectives for the turn, just killing things and scoring a battle tactic.
So Remington on paper's winning with more victory points, right?
Well, technically, I took the lead, but you've got this turn to make it up now, and you're holding lots of objectives, so...
Yeah.
With the lands being desecrated, you decide to jump on that bandwagon as well, and you're going to desecrate this with your squigs, which is in my bottom right corner. There is a big dice roll. What is that for? That is for the movement of the Boingrot Bounders. So I believe it was... Which dice was it? It was maybe those 3?
Yeah.
So I think you got about 16 inches on the move.
Which is phenomenal, because the Boingrot Bounders only get 2d6 movement.
Well,
so 2d6 plus a run.
Yes, because they can run and charge because the Bad Moon is in effect across the whole battlefield.
Yeah.
So they were able to... You were able to land right behind my lines and ignore the Imperator entirely. So you've now got a choice here. You can either charge one of these units or charge them both.
Now, Andy, you seem to think that I should have gone for that Lord Imperator and maybe be able to take him out.
In the previous turn, I think you should be ignoring him now.
Yeah, and that's what I did. So I thought I'd go over here and try and delete some of your long strikes because they were devastating to me. But it might be, shutting the barn door after the horses fled.
Well, I personally think that this unit should be getting into combat with both of them this turn and trying to kill both units. I think they're capable of it.
Yeah.
However,
how would you distribute the attacks? Would you go half and half?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Because this is only a 6 wound unit. That's a 10 wound unit. You can do, definitely, 16 wounds against these 4+ armor saves.
True, but you're definitely going to do Unleash Hell. Right.
Yes, but only with 1 unit. And also, did you have any other units to absorb it? I don't know. I think actually you kept some units on objectives.
Yeah, I didn't have anything else in range that could get
to you.
Well,
you kill the long strikes and you elect not to get within range of the Judicators. So you seem to be concerned about the combat prowess of the Judicators in that instance.
How do you mean within range?
You chose not to go within 3 inches of them so that they
What's-
couldn't pile into you.
Yeah, would you have?
I would have just charged in here and just fought both units. If you're more scared of the long strikes, you could put slightly more attacks on them. But overall, I think you'd kill them easily. You'd probably only need... how many models? Because you can all out-attack them.
Yeah, so I might kill 2 of your archers.
At least. And you'd also lock them in combat so they have to shoot you and nothing else. So, the Stormcast dead pile is building up now. Even my beautiful new, freshly painted long strikes with their bare heads that don't come as standard in the kit, requiring some conversion work. Got a nice upside down picture there that just shows the final Liberator versus a squig. And where is that? That's here. So, we've got the Snufflers in the middle. You've got these guys who are holding this piece of terrain.
Yeah.
That objective is active now.
You've got the Annihilators that look like they're out of everyone, but they could be now threatening
Yes.
the fungoid cave shaman there.
You're holding 2 of the objectives. I'm holding 1 at this stage. And I think that the Snufflers and either of these squig units, actually, if they had a chance, they should be going for the Judicators if you weren't going to go after them with the Boingrots. So I think these Boingrots are actually a very, very powerful unit against my army. Well, especially when they got that roll, because my units do not stand up well in close combat when you get into them like that.
No, and you can see in the middle at the bottom of the table, it looks like there's one squig. Is there one squig there fighting you?
I believe it is 1 squig versus 1 Liberator.
Amazing.
Okay, so on to Remington's turn. Scoring. And maximum points again. So Remington in the lead, because you've got 1 objective, 2 objectives, more than me, and a battle tactic. So, scoring the points, and look at that, I roll another 6 on the priority roll. It has to be said that the priority roll, I was using the official Stormkeep dice from the Stormkeep YouTube channel with Stormcast tactics and such. If you haven't checked that channel out and you're a Stormcast player, you probably should. I got some of their official dice and it was rolling very well for the priority roll. I decided to go for eye for an eye because I just lost a unit and I'm pretty sure I can kill 1 squig. And yes, the squig immediately dies from, I think it's the lightning blast maybe from the Knight Incanter. Or it may even be an arcane bolt actually from the Lord Imperatant. So if we go back a couple of pictures and look at in the middle here, there is a shaman and there's these 2 units. At the end of my turn, all of this has just been completely wiped out.
Amazing.
So the Annihilators get into combat. The shaman's still there. I haven't gone for him yet. The Knight Incanter has been translocated to that side of the table with the grand strategy in mind. I want to get more units over there.
I think you re-rolled your charge with the Annihilators and got that.
I think that is true. So I think I had to use a command point to do that, because obviously they only get the free reroll on the turn they came down. I gave Finest Hour to the Imperatant, because I was going to charge him in and try and kill some squigs. The Judicators shot down some squigs, which they wouldn't have been able to do, obviously, if they'd been attacked in the last round. So just total slaughter in the middle. Loads of dead things. Okay, here's the funniest moment of the game. The Lord Relictor decides to charge into the Boingrots. Entirely because he's done his job, he's teleported units into the enemy half, so they're going to score the grand strategy. He is sacrificing himself, trying to survive 1 round against the Boingrot Bounders, to stop them charging the Judicators next turn. He successfully survives, he's taken 4 wounds. He kills a few of them, maybe 3 with his attacks, he rolls quite well. And then the rest of them fail the battle shock by rolling a 6, and they all run away.
Yeah, I'm amazing at rolling battle shock tests. I always roll a 5 or a 6, which means the maximum number will run away. And Gitz have a bravery of 4 for Squigs and 5 for Boingrot Bounders. I didn't have anyone to issue a command to make them stay. So they were gone. Unbelievable. That was my only powerful unit left. But at this point, Andy's got lots of smaller units left on the table that can teleport. It's, terrible news for me.
We've got a comment from Irrelevant Prime, who says, have you often had good success with the Lightning Blast spell? Well, I like it on the Knight Incanter. Because she's only a knight, then of course she's got the lower range for most of her spells, but Lightning Blast doesn't have a range, so she's just as good at using that spell as a Lord would be. And it's just cheap, easy mortal wounds. And because it doesn't have a range, you can also be out of unbind range if you're so inclined as well. Depending what spells you're coming up against, because you usually want to be in range of enemy wizards with the Incanter, so you can do the free once per game unbind. But just having no range on it on a wizard that normally has short range spells makes it actually useful and gives her something to do. If you can position her in the turn before, keeping in mind what you want to target. So if you want to make a specific enemy unit the closest, then you have to manipulate that the turn before. But yeah, I do like it on her.
I can see a way that I could actually more likely to win this game from looking at it from your side of the table if the Boingrot Bounders had survived. Because I could get that claim that left side of the table, and then hopefully if I did I can run and charge that final Liberator, so I would have those 2 areas.
Well, that objective isn't active yet. This one is, but you'll see Remington made it a proving ground, which meant my Annihilators nor the Imperatant could actually take that one yet. Which means that that's still in Rem's control.
Yeah.
So, I've got this one. I've got this one now, because I've got the Annihilators here. But I don't have that one, and this one's not activated. I can't take that one because it's the proving ground. So I've got 2, Rem's got 2. Which means that I score 4 points because I've got my battle tactic, I kill the unit, I have an objective, I have 2 objectives, but I don't have more than Rem because of this one being the proving ground.
Yeah, so I'm currently 4 points ahead of Andy.
Well, if we look at the precise scores now, 11, 15 to 14, but I've played a turn more and I'm only 1 point ahead of you.
That's right.
So
there's a chance I could win this game even though almost all my units have been deleted.
Yeah, how many models have you got left now? You've got maybe about 8 in that unit. You've got a wizard. Is that it?
Well, my only hope is the Loon Shrine to bring a unit back. But the problem is, they don't come back at the start of my turn. They come back at the end of my turn.
Yes.
Which is quite annoying, really. And that's only if you roll a 4 up. I've got my Fungoid Cave Vet Shaman at the back there, who has a potentially tasty spell, which I cast. And what does that do? Well, let me tell you. Let's just get the war score up. I've got Spore Maws, casting value of 7. Each enemy unit within D6 of the caster suffers D3 mortal wounds. Unfortunately, that's not enough to delete the Annihilators or your Imperator. I think I'd cast it anyway and managed to kill one of the Annihilators.
One other thing to note here is that in the next turn you're picking the head-to-head battle tactic. So, your Galatian Veteran unit wants to kill my Galatian Veteran Liberator.
Yeah, so the Squigs on the right are going to come and try and do a long bomb charge into that Liberator.
Yes, and they can re-roll charges at the moment, can't they?
Yes, they can. With the Prodder guy there, they can.
Yeah, with the Prodder they can re-roll charges. They decide to stop outside of 9, because if they went within 9, the Liberator could have redeployed. And that would have potentially, because I think with the furthest they could have gone was only like here, but that meant that he could have redeployed and could have ended up going 6 inches away, and that would have just denied them the battle tactic. So re-rolling the charge, they're relying on it. Are there any other battle tactics that you could have done here instead?
I think that's running out, really.
Yeah, I think you're running low and you don't have a lot of units left, so it's getting tricky to score. So this is definitely doable. And head-to-head isn't one that I've ever accomplished, because my Galatian veteran units aren't very good at fighting. So, there you go. And they roll it as well, they get a 9, so they're going to get in there. We've got an upside-down picture here, but you can see I've put all-out defense on the Liberator on his final wound to try and survive. So you combat that with all-out attack, which I think is overkill, but you might as well. I don't know why all these pictures are upside down, but there he is, he's dead. So you do get your battle tactic.
I do think you blow up and kill one, which means that I might have to roll a bravery test.
Which is always bad news. So you've still got those 2 units left.
Yeah.
And you pick up 4 points that round because you hold 2 objectives. You still hold these 2, but not more than me. So you pick up 4 again. So you're in the lead going into round 5. Now, if you go first in the next round, if you have a battle tactic that you can actually accomplish, I think it becomes impossible for me to win.
Should be amazing. But yeah, I have to win the priority. I did. So this is the end of my turn 4. I did roll for the Loon Shrine, which could have been awesome if I could have brought back 5 squigs. But I failed that roll, which was huge.
Yes. So this objective is going to become active in the next turn. If you have a battle tactic that you can accomplish, then you're going to hold more objectives than me, which means that you would score 5 in the last turn, which means that I wouldn't be able to win.
Yeah.
Even with my grand strategy, I don't think it would be enough. So, let's see, because if I go next, lots of your units are going to die, you may even get tabled.
Yeah.
And I can obviously hop onto objectives if I go first as well. So...
Yeah, so I can't remember what I did. What did I do at this
point?
Point?
Who's going to go next?
Oh, that's it, yeah.
Oh no, it's the Stormcast. I rolled a 6 on the priority roll again.
So 4 rolls, you got 6. 4 rolls, I got a 1. I was trying to figure out the actual percentages of that, and it was something like 4% chance of it. Something ridiculous.
So that means I got the double turn at the start of the game. You haven't had a double turn at all.
No, and you can see those annihilators just, basically annihilated my fungoid squig shaman.
Yes. Now, I've made a little bit of a mistake here, because I've not spread these models out enough. Because if potentially get a unit back from the shrine at the end of your next turn, you can drop them down. You only have to be 3 inches away from enemy units, don't you?
Yeah.
So you could actually drop a unit down in range of this objective, and you would have more models in it than I do. Because if I moved the Incanter closer, that would count as 5. So if you brought down a 5 model unit, it wouldn't be enough to take the objective off me. But because the Knight Incanter is there and not here, then I've actually given you the opportunity to take that objective now. So that's a mistake.
I wouldn't have thought of that, so yeah.
I've shot down this squig unit to 3, only 3 left. And you made that the proving ground.
Yes.
Oh, by the way, in this turn I picked barge through enemy lines, because obviously I was going to accomplish that. I was saving it for the end of the game. I've got the Incanter there, and I've got some long strikes over there. So it was easy to score that one. So I score maximum in the last round. So, how many points can Remington score in this round with 3 squigs? You decide to go for the only one that you think you can accomplish is gaining momentum. So, the way that you can do that is by killing the Judicators and taking this objective off them. Then you would score the battle tactic, and you would also get maximum points for the round. However, unfortunately, that doesn't happen.
And why not, Andy?
I believe that they died.
They failed a bravery roll. Of course they did. There's only, I think 3 or 4 of them were killed. So it didn't take a lot for them to run away.
Yeah, so they ran away, which meant
I've got no units left.
it was very improbable for you to get a battle tactic, so you couldn't get one. You got 3 points in the last round, which you got by taking this objective off me when these guys came out of the shrine at the end of the turn, and you already owned these two, so you held more objectives than me, so you got 3 points.
So 20 points in total, and I'm looking at your dice there that show...
You're on 21 points there.
Is it 21 points? And you're
Yep.
on something like, what is it, 5, 10, 18?
I'm on
You're on
23 with the grand strategy.
Yeah, there's
Because
the grand strategy that...
the long strikes and the knight encounter being in your territory gives me an extra 3 points at the end of the game. So 21 points to 23. So without the grand strategy, Remington finishes with more points.
Which I was really surprised at, because I did think turn 2, I was devastated. I thought that's the end of it, but I don't know. Somehow I managed to come back. Did I make any mistakes? Maybe, but I think I played all right.
At one point, you did actually get tabled, but then these guys came out of the shrine right at the end of the game.
Oh yeah, so I rolled successfully, did I somewhere?
Yes.
Yes, I got some Borngrot bounders that came back. Amazing. I don't know if I'm allowed to bring back bounders. I'm not sure.
Well, whichever unit you picked, it wouldn't have mattered anyway, because you still had enough models to take that objective off me.
Yeah.
So, if we were playing under the old 20-0 tournament scoring system that some people use, that probably would have been an 11-9, or depending exactly how it was scored, maybe a 12-8, but very, very close game. And clearly, if you had a battle tactic you could have accomplished in the last turn, or if you'd got any double turn throughout the whole game and killed some of my shooting, if I'm going to say what are the Remington mistakes in this game, I would say not charging into multiple units at once when you had the opportunity.
Yeah, always scared to do that though, because I always think that spreading out your attacks too thin means you're not actually going to delete any units. That's what I'm worried about.
Particularly this one, when you had the chance to kill the Judicators and the long strikes in one go, I definitely would have taken that.
Mm-hmm.
Which obviously would have changed the outcome because these guys ended up being important. Let's see. Mistakes I made, not screening off this objective or putting another model near to it so that when you brought a unit back you could take that objective off me.
Yeah, that's something I need to learn more about is screening. I think the other thing is when I play your Stormcast, I tend to not try and I don't seem to kill any of your heroes.
I wouldn't be too concerned about that.
Yeah.
The heroes have a pretty limited role. The only one, if you can kill the Lord Imperatant in the first couple of turns, yes, because it stops the Annihilators dropping down so close to you. So, on average, they will probably fail the charge if they have to come down 9 inches away.
Yeah.
So if you can kill him early, otherwise there's no point. The Relictor, if you can kill him, you're stopping me teleporting. So that's the only one, really, that throughout the game you may be looking to kill. The Incantor you don't need to worry about at all. I don't think I actually had to use her auto-unbind during the game because you kept failing to cast all your spells.
Yeah. I did manage to unbind quite a few of your spells, though, to be fair.
You did unbind a few of my spells because I was on -1 to cast because the Bad Moon was in the centre for most of the game.
Yeah. I think not killing the Annihilators that appeared at the back and ignoring them might have been a mistake. It might have been better to charge in with the Breaker Boss and try and get rid of them, because look what they did at the end. They managed to take that whole centre and back.
Potentially, because let's think about it. So the Breaker Boss was here. The unit of squigs on their own, would they have been able to take down the Liberators? Maybe. Do you think you would have won that grind? 10 squigs versus 5 Liberators?
Yeah, I mean, if you take it back a few, pictures, maybe we could show everyone what we're talking about if they've joined us late. I think the squigs, it could have been a grind. However, I could have had a few run away on me there.
Okay,
But when they do run away, they can cause you mortal wounds.
Yes. This is the exact moment we're talking about here. So,
Yeah.
there are Annihilators that came down and failed their charge. The Mangler Squig, it worked out fine for the Mangler Squig coming this way because you were able to get into combat. And then if you'd got a double turn, you could have then eaten long strikes. The Breaker Boss teamed up with the Squigs to fight the Liberators. So, you're saying that maybe the Squigs could have charged in there on their own, and the Breaker Boss could have gone back and eaten the Annihilators before they become a problem.
Yeah, or the Loon Boss could have gone in on the Annihilators, and then I try and do a Hand of Gork. But I was a bit scared of doing that because I never passed the spell test, did I? Never managed to get it off.
One thing I would say is a possibility. If you're worried that you just might not have enough damage to kill the Annihilators because you can't do your monstrous rampage against Astral Templars, then you've always got cheeky little things like an Arcane Bolt, where you can just shoot one mortal wound at them, just to chip away, because they've only got 9 wounds in the whole unit in total.
Is it an auto wound?
If the spell goes off, it's just automatically 1 mortal wound.
Wow.
So maybe you could have killed them. I think if you were going to run away from them, you had to really go all in on that, because I don't think you ran far enough. You can totally leave them out the game if you'd got a bit further away from them.
Yeah, I mean the snuffles, the sneaky snufflers, when they were running away, they didn't actually get that far. I rolled really poorly on the run, so they only moved something like 7 inches, and I was hoping to move about 10 inches away. Another thing I was thinking of doing, now you got this picture up, is I should have brought an endless spell with me, Mork's Mighty Mushroom. And I didn't bring it because I thought you'd have so many multi-wound characters that it wouldn't make a difference. But however, if I'd have got that Mork's Mighty Mushroom right in the forest at the bottom of your page, all those units, you've got how many models is within like a 12-inch range? It could have been 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 16, 17 models potentially, where every turn on a 5-up, there'd be a mortal wound.
Yeah,
so it's whittled them down. It's
not at all unlikely that you could have killed a long strike or 2 with that.
Mm-hmm.
Probably Adjudicator. There's 5 in that unit. So that would have forced me to spread out a bit as well.
Yeah.
However, you do have to consider you would probably have to cast it twice, because the first time you do it, I'm definitely going to auto unbind it.
Yeah. The other thing I could have gone with is, instead of the Breaker Boss, I could have brought my Squig Gobber to 6 attacks, and it can shoot anyone on the board. Big range. Doesn't matter about visibility.
Against this list specifically, I would say that is probably good, because you didn't have anything to shoot off my shooting with.
No, and they don't take off. There's no rend, and there's no mortal wounds. So I think the Squid Gobbler, if they were going to improve it, was to somehow make it dish out mortal wounds. But however, it's 6 attacks, 4's to hit. If I did an all-out attack, it could be 3's to hit, 3 to wound, and they do D3 damage. So on a good roll, I could potentially get 6 wounds off you.
And even if you just kill 1 or 2, that's still good. The armor
save is so good with the Stormcast.
One thing I was saying that may have been useful to your list is allying in some Bolt Boys from the Cruel Boys.
Yeah.
Because I think Bolt Boys are the bane of my existence as a Stormcast player, because I don't have ward saves in this army, and they splash mortal wounds all over the place. So if you're shooting at a 6-wound unit like Long Strikes that's 240 points, and you're doing mortal wounds that I can't do anything about, you're going to be dropping them like flies, I think. Because you've got a decent range on them as well, haven't you?
The Bolt Boys?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to have a look at what their Cruel Boy... man skewer bolt boys, yeah. They're only 120 points for 3. Let's see what they do.
They've got a decent range, haven't they?
They've got a 24-inch range, 1 attack, 2 to hit, 3 to wound, 2 damage, -1 rend.
But if you roll is it a 5 or 6 to wound, it does mortal wounds instead. 5 or 6 to hit suddenly becomes mortal wounds. Because I'm always terrified when I see a unit of 3 or 6, especially of those.
No, I can't see that rule. I think that might be the massive...
No, I think that's just the army in general. It's like a rule specifically for the whole army. They do mortal wounds on 6s or 5s and 6s.
But that wouldn't count if they're allies, would it?
I don't know. I haven't looked at the book.
Yeah.
I don't see why not.
Man skewer aimed.
By the way, you've got some rousing words from the chat. Russell says, Rem, you may be outscored, but you are never defeated.
I'm so used to getting annihilated by Andy now. And not just Andy, but like anyone I play against. It's like I'm kind of immune to feeling bad. And so, I don't know. My mindset's changed a bit. I think in the past it's been, I know I'm going to lose, but can I delete some units of Andy's? And my mindset's changed to, can I get actual victory points? Because that's what counts.
Irrelevant Prime says, do you think the Stormcast list might be in trouble against Ironjaws? Yes. I think this list is in trouble against a few things. Nurgle Infantry, Ironjaws. I think even this Gloomspite Gitz army is potentially troublesome because there's fast, cheap, multi-wound units that can get to my shooting, and I don't have much to stop them. Actually, the scoring for this game is very similar to how most of my games go with lists like this. It's very easy for me to score points because I'm teleporting around all over the place onto objectives and killing things quite easily. But my units don't survive very long, and some of them are extremely fragile if you can get to them, and I can't put something down on an objective and have it stay alive in that spot. So the enemy are also scoring loads of points. So very high scoring, exciting games. Let's see. William says you only get poisoned attacks if your Cruel Boys Allegiance doesn't work with allies. Wow, okay.
Yeah, I thought so. But I think you might have been referring to the Beast Killer's Kill Bow.
Does that one do mortal wounds on its own?
No, it doesn't. But it does. It does do a lot of damage if you get it through. So you shoot one big bolt thrower. It's basically a bolt thrower. You shoot one. Damage characteristic is you roll a number of dice equal to the wounds of the target unit. So let's say you've got a 6 wound unit. The damage characteristic is equal to 2, right? So I do 2 wounds, 2 damage, +1 for each roll of a 5 up.
I would say that's all very well, but it's pointless allying in that shooting then if they're not doing the mortal wounds. I think just a Cruel Boys army is usually annoying to face, especially if it's the one that stops you being able to see them. So, yeah, lots of mortal wounds being dished out there. But I think if you can find a way to do more mortal wounds, particularly mortal wounds at range, so the mushroom, that's a good start. Maybe more wizards, because spells are going to be your friend, and something to screen out your stuff you want to protect a bit better.
Yeah, so what I'm working on next is some more squig hoppers.
Nice.
That's the next on. That's next on the painting table.
I think in particular the Slogoth.
I've got loads of grots as well. I've got loads of grots.
The Slogoth is actually really important for your army. With that buff it gives all the units nearby. So keeping that alive, I think, is more important than it might appear.
I'm going to have to lose something to gain more squig hoppers or more screening units, aren't I? Do you know what I mean? So what do I take out this army? The Snufflers are only 75 points. They help the Bounders, but didn't really do a lot else. So I could lose the Snufflers, but I'm going to have to try and get 180 points. So, yeah, 100. The Marsh Crawler is 150 points. So yeah, lose the Marsh Crawler, lose the Snufflers, buy some more Squig Hoppers, and then Mork's Mighty Mushroom for 40 points. That might do it.
So as Russell is saying in the chat there, I think your army is actually quite well suited to facing a shooty Stormcast army. Because you're going to lose things, like you lost half your army before you'd even done anything.
Yeah.
But you still managed to get in there and got into some very dangerous positions, and if you'd got a double turn at any point during the game, you would have killed a lot more.
Yeah, or a Hand of Gork as well, to get them there. Yeah, true.
Yeah, because my Unleash Hell is not going to kill a unit of 10 Squig Hoppers. At best, I might kill 2. 3 if I'm very lucky, but that's still 7 of them, which is more than enough to kill any of my shooting units.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think maybe there was a point during the game where you kind of sat on the objectives instead of chasing my army down.
Yeah, in my head, I think you have to stay on the objective to claim the points, but you don't, do you?
No,
you
just
leave
leave
the last one there.
You leave it open for the enemy to just come in and take it if you abandon it. But I don't think I was ever going to get to them. I think you could have just... all your Squig units that had any models left alive at all could have just been bounding straight towards my shooting, and I'm only going to teleport 1 unit away per turn.
Yeah, I mean, another thing I could lose is the Troggoths, because they've never actually done anything good for me. I mean, against a battle against dragons, they did manage to kill a dragon or 2, but they did get deleted by the start of by the end of turn 2 easily.
Well, how much do you pay per wound for a Troggoth?
I've got 6 Troggoths, and altogether they cost 310 points. 4 wounds each, so 6 times 4 is 24. 15 points? That's just a gap in my head. 310 divided by 24.
And how many points are you paying for a unit of 10 Squigs?
140.
So that's 20 wounds.
Yeah.
So you're getting a lot more wounds with the other units, and when I'm just shooting you with mortal wounds, I'm getting a lot better value from shooting Troggoths than I am from shooting Squigs.
And the Squigs could potentially come back, and they're easier to rally, but they are prone to running away.
So there is a case for dropping the Troggoths if you're not going a full Troggoth army, because when you do, you can bring them back with the shrine.
Yeah. A major problem is that with Gloomspite Gitz is when you get to the opponent's side of the table with your fast melee, you're very prone to bravery because you're not within the radius of the Loon Shrine.
Yes, and especially if it's multiple units that are taking damage, you can only stop one of them with a command point. I think this particular scenario, the setup of it didn't help because it's a small territory, isn't it? Mm. So you don't have a perfect spot to position your Loon Shrine. Because in some scenarios, you can have it positioned further forward, can't you?
Which is what I wanted to do.
Yeah. So that's also something to consider.
Yeah, I think I love my trolls, but I might at least, maybe just take 3. But yeah, I could lose the trolls, and then with the money, I could buy. Well, I'll be 10 points short, but I could buy some Squig Hoppers and some more Squigs.
Or a Squig Hopper unit and another wizard.
Yeah.
Because I think if you really delve into the magic options you've got, I think you can find something juicy in there.
I'm always surprised at how survivable the wizards are. Like, people don't seem to target them ever. You know what I mean?
Well, it's going to be even more.
Shot him down.
It's going to be. It's not that easy though, because when there's a Mangler Squig 12 inches away from you, I don't really want to be shooting the wizard.
No. Yeah, that's true. So yeah, another wizard.
Got some things to think about there. Going into the next season, which we'll talk about on the next show, by the way, whenever that is, we'll talk about the next General's Handbook and the changes that that's bringing. But one thing that's happening there is that unnamed, like, non-unique infantry heroes are going to get much stronger.
Nice.
So people like us that just buy one of everything are going to have all these heroes that have been sitting in the cupboard just unused for years, and now suddenly they might be usable again.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Will it become Hero Hammer?
Kind of. That's the idea of this season coming up.
Yeah. Does that mean a lot more rules to remember, though? Maybe.
It's funny you should say that, because yes, there are more heroic actions. There are some upgrades, some enhancements that you can put on the heroes that are unique as well, and there's some of the battle tactics rely on the Galatian champions as well. So you're going to want more of them in your lists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm thinking some of my heroes that are going to come out to play, the Knight of Zeros, because obviously he's really fast, so for getting to objectives, he's very good. Oh. And he's got a decent role in the army generally anyway. He's just not that exciting when you compare him to other units because he's a Stormcast hero and they're a bit underwhelming, but he's going to be useful now. There's the Knight Heraldor with the trumpet, who I really like. So I might see if there's any way of getting him into armies now. That would be nice, because I really like that model. Yeah. And there's who else? There's the Lord Veritant, who was initially, it was the only Stormcast model that could unbind spells, if you recall, when they brought him out.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Andy, Stormcast have got so many heroes.
Yes.
Whereas taking an army like the Gitz, they've just got a loon boss on foot.
Don't forget the wizards as well.
Okay, yeah, they've got wizards, fungal cave shaman, and just a madcap shaman. And I think I would like it if they did something with, that box set. I bought it because I just loved the models. And what was that called? These guys.
Squigalanche.
Not Squigalanche. They were. You got 5 different wizards. You've got a Boggle-Eye, Brugit.
Oh well, there you go then.
A Shrewmancer, a Scaremonger. I can't remember what they're called.
See if you can get a list together with the million squigs and 5 wizards, and see how that goes in the new book.
Yeah, they come with a set of 5 wizards. The Gobblerpalooza. I did use them once in a battle, and they were quite decent. That's it. Thanks, Irrelevant Prime. Cheers, mate. Yes, they come in at 190 points. But so you got 5 wizards. Or is it 4? Can't remember. 4 or 5 wizards, but they're all a separate unit. So you get one that gives a saving throw buff. Another one that subtracts hit rolls against my units. Another one that's anti-missile weapons. Yeah, they're quite good.
Well, you've certainly got some things to think about going into this new season with the Gitz. I've got a tournament this weekend with this Stormcast army, and I think I'll struggle against things that have cheap, tough infantry with lots of models. I think if I'm up against loads of monsters, that's what I want, because I'm taking the sub-faction that stops monstrous rampages targeting me, and I can dish out loads of mortal wounds and precision strike against monsters. So if I'm facing, for example, Kragnos, I'm confident I can take him down easily in a turn. Gargants are a bit tougher because they have a lot more wounds than him, but still, I'm confident with all my shooting and Annihilators dropping, and I can kill one of them each turn. So we'll see what I actually face, because it's a big tournament, but with it being a GT, and with it being not at Warhammer World, then I don't know if it's just going to be purely loads of elite players there. Because the ones at Warhammer World, you get a mixture, because you also get a lot of casual people who just want to play there because it's Warhammer World and it's fun. So we shall see. I'm not actually expecting to win games. Out of the 5 games, if I win 1, I'll probably be satisfied, because I was looking down the player list and there's a lot of people there that I know are good. I've played some of them before.
Oh, you got to the point where you're recognising other players now from around the country. That's impressive.
From around this specific region of the country, yes. Okay. I think we can wrap this one up then.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. And I did. So hopefully we can do it again. I fear that Andy will just bring a completely different list. Whereas, you just don't get as many options, I guess, with anything that isn't Stormcast. So good luck, Andy.
I do have a vast Stormcast army. Many of the models aren't that optimal at the moment, but maybe some of them that haven't been used in a while will become better with the new book, because obviously points changes as well. So it's not only heroes that are going to change up. And I'm also painting some Vanquishers at the moment as well, which are the slightly cheaper than Liberators. So it just frees up some extra points, and that can be helpful when list building. So, anything you want to say? Parting words, Mr. Remington, to the world?
No. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Yes, don't forget to join the Discord server, Facebook group, Twitter, all that good stuff. And good night out there, whatever you are.